Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1996 disaster film, Twister. Now, in my opinion, Twister is still a tremendous thrill ride of a film. I love this film. It's honestly one of my favorites. I would say it's my personal favorite disaster film. It's my favorite film of 1996. And it's one of my favorite films in the 90s. And it's just one of my favorite films in general. And it's not solely due to nostalgia, but that helps a little, I have to be honest, because I do have a lot of fond memories watching this on VHS and DVD. In fact, I remember this like being one of the first ever DVDs that I saw, which is fitting because it was one of the first ever films released on DVD. And to me, it's a film that is the complete opposite of dated. I think it holds up great. I think it's just as thrilling, just as entertaining, and just as fun as it was back when it came out in 1996. Not all films have to say something about society or have subtext or any of that in order to have merit. And I think Twister, it sets out to be a thrill ride. That's the whole point. Twister is trying to be a fun ride, and it succeeds. And in my opinion, it excels at doing that. There's a reason why Universal made a whole attraction out of this film, because it is that kind of movie that has just so much about it that gets your adrenaline pumping. It's directed by Jan de Bont, and I think Jan de Bont did a absolutely spectacular job with this. I think he did a really stellar job directing Twister, and I think he was the right man for the job. Prior to this, he did Speed, which is another one that I really enjoy, and it's another one of my favorites. And in that film, he showed that he can really showcase big action, like action sequences that have a lot of stunt work and explosions and visual effects. And he could shoot them in a way that was very adept, very skilled, but also in a way that maximized thrills. And he also showcased in Speed that he could also deliver when it comes to sequences that were a little bit more suspenseful or scenes that were trying to build tension. So when you get something like Twister, which is a film that is going to have a lot of the big pyrotechnics, it's going to have a lot of stuff flying around, it's going to have a lot of the elements that you might have seen like in the climax of Speed when the train is crashing or the subway is crashing. Sorry, it's not a train, but you get what I mean. It's crashing through everything. So you got a glimpse of that in Speed, and Twister is just upping the ante even more. And there's also this kind of horror film approach to Twister, like from the opening, when the Twister takes Joe's family, to a lot of the ways that the tornado scenes are shot. They're shot in a way where it is almost like a horror film. And I think in large part it's due to Jan de Bont. I think he was doing that on purpose. He was trying to show the tornado as something that was fearsome and something that was not only destructive, but something that could instill some sense of palpable fear in the audience. And I really do feel that he establishes that and accomplishes that very well throughout the film. In terms of his shot selection, in terms of the way that he is framing the shot so the visual effects can be added in to really provide exactly what he's looking for when it comes to the tornado sequences, the way that he shoots the scenes involving the debris, the stuff falling out of the sky, and how he handles all the different practical stunt work, and also how he just shoots scenes of the tornado chasers just, getting in their vehicles and driving down the road and chasing the tornado. Like, just the way that those are shot also has this very good energy to it, and it's very consistent throughout. And even some of the moments that just involve various different characters just interacting with one another, or eating dinner at the aunt's place, and having their steak and eggs and having their discussions with one another. Even the way that that is shot, it still has that energy to it. Like, it just has this consistent, just really strong energy throughout the film that really does carry it through. And there's some really impressive shots in this. Some really nice pans and zooms. There's some great overhead shots that are utilized very well. Some good wide shots that really do showcase the enormity or the intensity of the tornadoes. And yeah, overall, I think Jan de Bont just absolutely did a amazing job. And this is still one of his finest works as a director. The screenplay by Michael Crichton and Anne Marie Martin, I think, is honestly pretty underrated. I see a lot of contemporary critiques of Twister saying that it's dated and it's cliched and it's unrealistic and it's predictable and it's nothing special and there's no plot. It's just a tornado going through various different towns or different parts of Oklahoma, and tearing things up and throwing things around. And in some ways, that's accurate in terms of the tornadoes. But that's what you expect out of a Twister film. So I don't know why that's necessarily a negative. But in other ways, it's completely way off the mark, because there is a plot. In fact, there's two main plots throughout the film. There's plot A, which is kind of like a sports film involving Joe and Bill and their weather machine, Dorothy, and the other team, which is headed up by Cary Elwes' character, the rival team, Jonas. So Jonas's team, uh, who stole the idea from Bill and Joe, they are the ones that are competing with Bill and Joe to see who's gonna get their weather machine into the tornado first. Then the second plot is really a love story. It's about reconciliation between Bill and Joe. It's about them being estranged at first, to the point where Bill even has this new woman in his life, Melissa, and he's trying to get Joe to sign these divorce papers, and he wants to move on and be with Melissa, but you get the sense that there's just something not clicking between the two. And when you see Bill spending more time with Joe, you really start to feel like they really are meant for one another. And then throughout the course of the film, while the Bill and Joe and Melissa and the whole crew of tornado chasers, they're dealing with all these tornadoes and they're dealing with these storms on the outside, they find a way to calm the storms inside. And it leads to Joe and Bill getting back together, which is a very crowd pleasing, cathartic moment. And it actually has one of the rare instances in a film that features a triangle of sorts like this in the plot, where the woman who is with the guy at the start, she just is okay with it. She's like, yeah, I'm not, you know what? I'm surprised, but I'm not even mad. And she needs you, and I'll be able to find my way home just fine. Like, it's an amicable breakup with a fiance. This is not something you see that often. That actually makes this script stand out because that's not a common thing in films that deal with this kind of romantic subplot. Also, the way that that character was presented and written, Melissa didn't really come across like she was a bad person. She was just kind of not a good fit for Bill because, she's put through the storms and she's put through the tornadoes and she's dealing with all the twists and turns that come with that. And she can't really handle that. And Bill isn't meant to be a weatherman. He's meant to be a tornado chaser because Bill is the extreme and Joe is more of the same. So it's not really one of those things where, oh, she's like a total bitch and she's mean and she's this and that and naggy and so on and so forth. They didn't really go that route, which I thought was very refreshing. So those are definitely elements of the script that deserve a heck of a lot more credit. Another thing is just how this screenplay manages to have all these different characters in terms of all these different storm chasers who are part of Joe's crew and even Jonas's crew. I mean, really, Jonas's crew, in terms of the characters that you at all have any sort of recollection of, it's Jonas and is the guy who's driving the van. But they at least provide enough with those two that there's a different kind of dynamic. The guy who's driving the van, he's like, man, like he doesn't really seem like a bad guy. It just seems like he's the kind of guy who's just following orders. But Jonas, on the other hand, is a total dirtbag, and he makes for a pretty effective villain. And then when it comes to the other storm chasers, they have all these different varying personalities and quirks, like their taste in music, the way that they react to the twisters or the tornadoes. Some of them have a more scientific approach. Some of them are more about the adrenaline, and it's just really something that makes this film so much better when it comes to its story and its script. Is you have a ton of these different storm chasers and these different characters, but there's time that's being taken to provide them with distinct personalities and charm that makes them very likable. And you even have some really fun lines of dialogue, not only just from the storm chasers, but of course from Bill himself or Joe. And it just makes this story, which is already a fun concept and a fun idea, even more fun and entertaining. And then when it comes to the tornado stuff, like you get what you are looking for and then some. You get various different types of tornadoes. You get, various different forms. So you get like the F1 or the F2, you get like an F3, you get an F4, you get an F5. You see like two tornadoes at one point. You see twin tornadoes. So that's definitely something that is absolutely not a letdown. And when it comes to the various different amounts of carnage that is caused by these tornadoes, it has a really steady, strong build to it. Like you have the opening with the F5 that takes away Joe's family, but you don't really see the tornado that much. You just see a little, some swirling wind, and you see some damage being caused to the house and the boards flying off, and you see the mom and the dad getting thrown into the tornado or getting sucked into it, but you don't really get a whole wide shot or anything that really shows a tornado up close. And so as the story progresses, it just seems like things just get increasingly more and more intense and more incredible when it comes to the tornadoes that start appearing. And I know it's not the most realistic thing in the world. So what? It's a movie. It's not something that's supposed to be shown on the Weather Channel, but in all honesty, I wouldn't be surprised if it is showing on the Weather Channel, knowing how the Weather Channel is nowadays. But it's one of those things where it delivers on what you are looking for out of a tornado movie. Like you get it builds and builds and builds, then you get to the just insanity of the drive-in theater sequence, and then you go from that to a really tense gripping sequence at at the Aunt Meg's house while it's collapsing in on itself, and Joe and Bill have to try to save her before it falls completely into the ground. Then you have the F5 and everything that entails with that. The thrilling scene with Bill and Joe in the truck as there's debris. By debris, there's like giant like tractors and stuff falling from the sky. Before that, an entire gas tanker was picked up by the tornado and then thrown at them, and then it explodes, and then they drive through the explosion, and that's the start of that. And then you think, okay, how it can't possibly get crazier than that, but it does. You get all the tractors and stuff falling out of the sky, and they're swerving and avoiding it, and then an entire freaking house rolls right in front of them. And you got, I love this line by uh Bill, by the way. We're going in, and then just drives through the house. Like, that is just insane, crazy, wild fun. That's what that is. And then you have the finale where the tornado actually does suck up the Dorothy and the truck, and you get all the trying to remember what they are, like I don't know what to call them. You know, they're like these things that have like all this scientific stuff in them, and they fly up into the tornado and give the storm chasers and the scientists who are part of the group the readings that they need to try to help predict tornadoes better and save lives. And you think, okay, all right, that's over. Like it, you know, they got dangerously close to this F5 and they made it out alive, and they got the Dorothy in there, and it's all good. But no, the tornado then starts coming after Bill and Joe, and have to run through the cornfield, go into the barn with these sharp implements on the ceiling and hanging for everywhere. And I love the line where they're like, "Who lives here?" Like, I'm like, is this like the Sawyer family? Is it just all these like sharp implements and stuff? And they somehow survive an F5 tornado. They tie themselves to the belt that's strapped to the pipe, and they see the inside of the tornado, which is really cool, and was honestly genuinely gorgeous, and it was a fun idea. Was it super realistic? Probably not. But that's not what I'm looking for out of this kind of movie. And I like that there's still a lot of stakes when it comes to this plot, but it's not, oh, the tornado's going through a big city and it's blowing up a gas plant, and now the tornado's on fire. Like, it doesn't really go that route. Like, you have like the F5, and it's just going through this small farming community, and it does some damage, but it's not really like the kind of damage that you might necessarily expect from a climactic storm or tornado in a disaster film. But it still is very effective and still very thrilling and full of tension because of the way that it's written, and because of the way that it's structured, and because of the goodwill that the script has bought when it comes to the audience with these characters. And I think that's really one of the biggest strengths of Twister, other than some of the fun lines of dialogue. You know, the whole, oh, you know, that was the evil Bill and I killed him, or you know, the whole stuff with Phillip Seymour Hoffman, pretty much anything that that character was saying. His character, Dusty, food, like, stuff like that. And that's definitely a strength, but it's it's also the characters themselves, specifically Joe and Bill. The way that they're written, I think they make for a really good couple. Their love story is actually, in my opinion, genuinely compelling, and it just makes for all the more of a thrilling and genuinely suspenseful film throughout, because you're engaged. You want them to not only get back together, but you want them to succeed in their mission, and you want them to get Dorothy up into the tornado. And it just makes for something that's never really that dull, never really that boring when it comes to the story. The characters are a massive strength that this script has in its favor, because they come across as real down to earth people. They don't come across as larger than life, you know, comic book uh type archetypes, or people in general. Like, they don't really come across that way, at least not to me personally. So I think that's definitely something that is, for a lot of different reasons, has helped this film stand the test of time. And yeah, it's a script that I think it just delivers on all fronts. Like, it really does give you everything that you're looking for out of a film like this, and dealing with tornadoes and then some. And then you have just such a amazing, great cast. You got Helen Hunt as Joe, Bill Paxton as Bill. This is honestly definitely my favorite role from Helen Hunt. Like, I thought she was really good in this. She was charming. She had a lot of spunk. She had a lot of spark to her. She was very charismatic. And I felt that she showcased other sides of her character that weren't just the gung ho tornado chaser. Like, there was some vulnerability to her performance as well, that definitely did provide some extra nuance. And Bill Paxton was just an absolute joy to watch as Bill. Like, you could tell that he loved playing this role. He was having the time of his life, and it really does show. He and Hunt just have some really excellent chemistry, and it's, in all honesty, my favorite Bill Paxton performance. It really is. Like, I just love the way that he plays this role and plays this character. You know, how initially starts off as maybe a little bit standoffish because of this whole thing with this other girl that he's in a relationship with. He wants to split things off with Joe, and you don't quite know what's going on between the two of them and what their history is. But then as the film goes on further, their bond becomes honestly pretty obvious, and it becomes obvious that it's not broken. And so you just really have fun with those two. And when it comes to their back and forth, when it comes to just everything that they bring to their characters, especially when it comes to the two of them on screen together. But even Paxton on his own is really great. Like, I really love his line delivery in the drive-in scene. Where they're like, it's on its way, and then he's like, it's already here. Like, just the way that he said that was great, and it was just really nice to see Bill Paxton be, in a lot of ways, up front and center here. Like, he wasn't really like a supporting character. Like, he was also the lead. So that was really nice to see. And I also like Jami Gertz as Melissa. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of people remember the "We Got Cows" scene, because she did such a great job saying that line. Like, that line is kind of ludicrous when you think about it, but the way that she did it was so earnest and sincere that it was actually genuinely funny. And I just feel, she really did a good job playing this character that was, in all honesty, kind of difficult, because it's easy for the audience to maybe lean towards hating her because she's driving a wedge between Joe and Bill, and you really start to feel like Joe and Bill should be together and not Bill and Melissa. But the way that Gertz handles it is very professional, very well done. And I feel that she has some underrated comedic moments. And when it comes to her, like, reacting to the storm and the tornado and all the stuff that's happening around her, it does add to the realism of the film, because she's the one that, in a lot of ways, would be like most of us in this kind of scenario. Like, we're to be screaming our heads off, or being absolutely terrified. I'm not going to be like going, woo, oh, hell yeah, there's an F5 on the way, I can't wait to see that. Like, I'm like, get me the hell out of there. Um, so that it provided a nice contrast. And Cary Elwes he is like one of the best actors to cast to play a dirtbag. He was a great dirtbag in Days of Thunder. He's a great dirtbag here as Jonas. Uh, he just has that smarminess to him that I feel that very few actors really have, in a way that still makes him somewhat charismatic. Like, he's charismatic despite him being so smarmy. And so it leads to you like loving to hate this guy. Like, God, I hate this guy. He's a jerk. He's a total asshole, total dirtbag, but I kind of like watching him. And that's a testament to Cary Elwes and his talent as an actor. And Lois Smith was really special, really strong as Aunt Meg. I loved the scenes with her. Her comic timing was great. Her chemistry with all the storm chasers was really good, as well with Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt. It was very sweet, especially the scene with her and Helen Hunt where it's the inspirational moment. Like, it's the moment where she's providing motivation to Joe. It's like, no, you go out. I'll be fine. You go chase that storm. You go after that tornado. You save some lives. And I mean, Phillip Seymour Hoffman, this is one of my favorite performances of his. He's just so fun. He's so giddy, and it's just infectious. I love this performance. Alan Ruck was good too as Rabbit. This is Bob's Road. Sean Whalen was fun as Sanders. I also like Scott Thompson as Preacher, especially I loved the way that he was rocking out to the classical music in his car. Todd Field was good as Belzer. Joey Slotnick as Joey. Um, you also have like Wendell Josepher as Haynes, Jeremy Davies as Lawrence, Zach Grenier as Eddie, Gregory Sporlorder as Willie. You also have Nicholas Sadler, who played a character named Kubrick. Um, Jake Busey apparently was in this, but I did not recognize him at all. He played like a mobile lab technician. He must have been one of the guys on Jonas's side, and had no dialogue, because I didn't even recognize him. And I watched this recently in 4K. Interesting. Anthony Rapp, who was in Rent, was also in this in a brief role as a character named Tony. But definitely, like, it has a good supporting cast, but the big standouts are Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton, and they really do carry this film and do a great job doing that. And I mean, the technical merits are just off the charts to me. I mean, the cinematography by Jack N. Green, I think, is great. I think the editing by Michael Kahn is magnificent. I think it's some of his best. I genuinely do, because it really does emphasize the chaos and the just sheer intensity and just thrill and rush that is being involved, or right next to a tornado as it's touching down. I also want to mention the effects by Industrial Light and Magic. For the time, they were state of the art, and I think for the most part, the CGI still holds up really well. There's a couple moments where the CGI is a bit off looking, like there's a satellite in space in one shot for like 10 seconds that doesn't look that great. And there's like a couple other shots involving some of the twister shots, but for the most part, I think the CGI looks great. And it's actually held up really well over the years compared to some of the other CGI effects from around the same time period. Also, this film doesn't get anywhere near enough credit for its just absolutely spectacular practical stunts and effects. There's so much in this film that's done practically when it comes to the debris, when it comes to like hail, when it comes to like the wind and like the whole drive-in sequence, for instance. So much of that is done practically and done for real, with stuff flying around and smashing through the wall, and even like the scene where they're in the truck and stuff's falling out of the sky, they're actually dropping real stuff out of the sky or out of, out of frame onto the ground, and they're having stunt drivers drive out of the way. When the house rolls right into frame, they're actually driving through like a real house set. At least that's exactly what it looks like. Maybe they use some miniatures or something, but like it looks like the real deal. It doesn't look, it's not done with CGI or a green screen. And so there's a lot of other moments like that throughout the film where they're actually doing this stuff for real. Like for instance, the gas tanker, that was a real gas tanker. That was not CGI. That was a real gas tanker that they put up on cables. The music by Mark Mancina is awesome. It's one of my favorite scores. I love this score by Mark Mancina. It's epic, but it's also very hopeful when it needs to be. It has a really good spirit to it, which definitely does help with the film's pacing and just the overall energy throughout. And I love the soundtrack for the most part. Some of the sappier songs I'm not as big on, but I love the Van Halen tracks in particular. Humans Being kicks major fucking ass, and so does Respect the Wind, the guitar solo that Eddie did. So I mean, how can you not love Twister? How can you not like this film? It's got not one Van Halen track, it's got two of them with some of Eddie Van Halen's best guitar work. And yeah, it's 113 minutes, but man, it doesn't even drag once. It's about as fast paced and as quick as an actual twister rolling through the town. Like it's that much of a consistent thrill, at least to me personally. Like, and I cannot recommend this 4K enough. The Steelbook, like I said, I've definitely warmed up to this cover art, but I can see why some people might be less than impressed. But the disc itself is the best the film has ever looked or sounded. Yes, there's some shots that are green, but that was something that Jan de Bont wanted to do, and I think the cinematographer wanted to do, but they just didn't have the capability to really pull that off as well as they wanted to. So they did that a little bit in certain shots, kind of made things a little darker to fit the way that the sequences or the shots involving some of the tornadoes would look if you were actually in that situation. And I feel it didn't really distract from the overall transfer that much. It's got a fair amount of grain. There's not really any DNR, or at least not anything that was that noticeable. It's got some good highlights. It's got some good HDR. There's no Dolby Vision on this one, but there is one on the upcoming Universal release, which I'm tempted to maybe get because I do like the cover art better on that one, but it's pretty expensive, so I don't know about that. But really, the picture quality, as good as it is, it's not really the biggest selling point, surprisingly enough, for this 4K. The biggest selling point is the Atmos track. This Atmos track will shake the walls of your house, your apartment. It'll blow you away. Like this Atmos track is reference quality, and like there's so many things involving this Atmos track that will just get the most out of whatever your sound system is. even if you just have a 5.1 system and it's not even something like a Samsung high-end soundbar or a Sonos or a Dragon or some of these other soundbar systems, or a home theater system with an AVR. Like, even if you don't have something like that, I still think it's gonna really get the most out of whatever your sound system is, with the surrounds and the rears, if you have those. Even if you don't, it's as long as you have a good subwoofer and a good quality enough soundbar or some good speakers, like it is going to put you right in the middle of the storm in these scenes, and it's immersive and it's just incredible. And it just makes such a thrilling, fun film, like all the more thrilling because it's like you're back in the theater watching it again, because you're getting that experience because the Atmos track is that good. And I know there are people who aren't really as enthusiastic about it as I am. There are people who aren't really as big on the film, and teach their own. But to me, this will always be a classic, and this will always be one of the go-to disaster movies. And It's just such a rush. It really is.